a voice check.
Hello, Dietmar. This is Peter. I can hear you fine.
Hello, everybody. Say hi. Introduce yourselves.
Sure. My name's Peter Francis, and I'm here with my wife, Jennifer. We're on a catamaran Saphira.
Welcome, Peter. We got Brent down there in the lower corner. Hi, guys. Where are you?
Hey, good morning. Brent and Debbie here on Change of Pace. We are currently in Key West, Florida.
And then we
Thank
got
you.
Dennis.
We are on a Beneteau 473 and Margaret.
Hey, Margaret. OpenCPN has been a very instrumental tool as an additional aid to navigation, but they make your voyaging a little easier. So it can run on a tablet, it can run on a Windows laptop, it can run on a Mac laptop. The only thing it really doesn't run on is an iPad or an iPhone, and the reason for that is OpenCPN runs on a license that is incompatible with the iStore for iPad and iPhones. Therefore, OpenCPN will never be ported onto the iOS, but it is available on the Mac OS. We started using this about 5-6 years ago, and the impetus was there was a yacht, Fred Again 3, who wound up on a reef in Roatan. He was a single-hander, he was heading up, and he trusted the charts. And in trusting the charts, which were perfectly fine up until to that area, as we always say, it only has to go wrong once for a boat to wind up on a reef, and he did. And to add insult and injury, because he wound up on a reef in an environmental sensitive area, he also was asked to pay for a cleanup fee. So not only did he lose the boat, he also lost a lot of money. And that was before we even started the route towards the Caribbean. Just going a little back, I started using satellite navigation in Fiji, where the reefs are really packed and the charts have not been that good, although the Admiralty apparently did chart it 2 years ago. And what we're dealing with is we want as much information about sketchy areas as possible. And for that, we tend to rely on our eyes, we tend to rely on routes if we sailed into that area before. We tend to rely on physical aids to navigation, such as buoy, channel markers, or in some parts in the South Pacific, locals where they put a stick in there. But at the end of the day, it's really your own draft and your own ability to get in and out for areas where the charting cannot be trusted. There's lots of charting software out there. There's lots of chart suppliers. But at the end of the day, none of the charts can really give you 100% accuracy. And your chart plotter will say that, because when you boot up your chart plotter, the first thing it will say not to be used for navigation. For those who want to go a little further, who want to leave the well-charted ports, and there's about 4,000 extremely well-charted ports in this world, but that does not help you when you want to get into some really pristine areas or some nice cruising grounds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you where my vessel is and where I am, which is here. And on most charts, you may have a better chart, but you basically have this kind of a view of the area. And the interesting thing here is this is the version which shows it to me with a satellite image with my vessel in position over here. This little black icon here represents my vessel, and it represents it here. In this particular environment of OpenCPN, we have both the position of my vessel on a chart and side by side with a satellite image. And I think this duality, combine that with a radar overlay on your chart plotter, combine it with a physical chart that you may have, combine it with a Latin long of the marina that you may have picked up from their website, will make your ability to get into here a lot easier. I particularly enjoy these satellite images because they show you clearly, you can see shoaling. And shoaling, particularly in an area where you have 9-foot tidal waves, is important. So what we have done as the Panama Posse, we've created these charts, and they're called MB tiles, the format of this particular satellite image. And now you have them available to you. That's the big overview. That's the reason we want to do this. And that's the reason it works, because even on a little tablet, I can enable this. So in my case, in my use case, I'll have my Raymarine chart plotter with my Navionics chip. I'll have a laptop, and I'll have one of these next to it. And the way you can integrate this, the way you can view this is in a variety of ways. The most important thing for you to know is if you want to find out where your boat is, you need to attach to a laptop a GPS unit. And this one works really, really well. We have mentioned this in many of the seminars. We've also mentioned this in a lot of the emails. It is a $33 device, which in fact now enables your laptop with an accurate GPS signal. So what you would do is you would basically plug this guy in. You would enable it by adding it to your connections. You're going to look at the data port and you're going to hit apply. Okay, we just heard a little ringy-ding, so that's usually a good sign. But in a little bit, we should get a green status symbol up here to know that actually the GPS is tracking and is talking to OpenCPN. The way OpenCPN gathers data is you have an underlying chart, and different areas have different chart sources, and you can change the display so as to add different satellite sources. So the satellite sources are just like in any other image, they just have different zoom levels. So in our case, if we go and we'll add a complete different area. So let's talk with somebody. Who do we have that's currently somewhere in Panama? We'll do an example of how we would load in this chart.
Hi, this is Vicky. Flora is actually at the bow of the boat fixing the anchor.
Okay.
So, we are currently in Shelter Bay, but if you're looking for a place that would be interesting, maybe the River Chagres where it comes out, because there is a reef that might be interesting to take as an example.
Okay, good. So let's go here on this side. So let's go to the River Chagres. So here's that lovely little River Chagres. And here it says Fuerte San Lorenzo. And what we're going to do now here is we're going to swap out and remove the Costa Rica charts. I actually don't have Panama in here. Hey, you know what? Let's do this together. While I have you on here, we're going to create a chart for the River Chagres. And we're going to launch a program that allows me to create a chart on the fly. And this particular chart tool that allows us to create chart is called SAS Planet. And we're just going to go zoom way out and go to Panama again. And we're zooming in using this particular tool until we get to the Rio Chagres, which is right here. One thing of note, down here it would tell me in the corner what my zoom levels are. So we're currently at zoom level 13. And this shows us the Rio Chagres with the Fuerte San Lorenzo. We are now at level 17, and as you can see, what Vicky was saying, here's some shoaling that is going on. But we can also change the source. We're currently using Bing satellite maps, and we can look at Google satellite maps for the exact same area. And with Google, we can sometimes zoom in even further. And as you can see, we can zoom in up to level 20. So for this particular chart entrance, what we would do then is we'd simply select Selection Manager, and we'll do a rectangular selection of this entrance. And now we're going to download levels, solid 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And we're just going to say, let's download all these charts locally so that we have them locally. And we'll make this in a couple of selections and we'll hit start. So now this particular tool goes out and it's going to create a chart for just this particular tricky entrance. We have about 40 seconds left before this is done. And it's now generating, it's going through all the different zoom levels and downloading them to my local computer. So I obviously do this before I go into areas where I have a slow internet connection. This one is finished too. This one is finished too. This one is finished too. Then we go back to the selection manager here. I click last selection. And now we're going to export this into this particular file format, which is called MB tiles. And we're going to save it to the directory where we want it. And I like to keep mine inside country folders. So we create a Panama folder here. And we'll call this Rio Chagres entrance. Now we're going to hit save, and we're going to specify 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. And we're now going to create the chart for this area. Voila, that was it. That's all it took. So it basically took all these pictures now, and it's now created the chart file. So let's go in and make sure that this actually worked the way we intended it to do. So I'm gonna go back to OpenCPN, say share, here we go. And now we're gonna go back here to Panama. I'm gonna zoom into here, and we're going to add the tile which we just created. So we'll add this directory, which is on the MB tiles. And I think we put it right here, MB tiles, Panama. There it is. We're going to select this folder, and we can hit apply. And now we're going to hit OK. And as we can see here, this is still this view, but all of a sudden we have this red outline. And this red outline, and this is something you'll get used to in OpenCPN, on the bottom here has little tile section, and you can barely see it, but it's X'd off. So we're going to undo the X here, and we make it visible. And now we have a perfect view on a local computer that is, for all intents and purposes, now no longer connected to the internet. And what we can do is we can actually plot, we can plot a course. We'll drop a mark here, all right? And we'll make it a different color so that we can see it better. Make it a first active waypoint. And as we zoom in, we can work our way around these obstacles. We'll drop another mark. I'll click the properties for this as a first active waypoint. And then we'll zoom in some more. So clearly there's a little rock here. We're going to avoid that guy. We'll drop another mark here. Properties of this one is going to be another active waypoint. And then we're going to zoom over here. Properties, change that to something more visible. And now it gets to the tricky part. This looks okay, so we'll drop another mark here. Properties, and we'll add another active waypoint here. And then going through this little opening here, we'll drop the last one. So this is what it looks like on the satellite chart, and I think we'd be happy with this particular approach. And this is what it would look like on the actual chart, where we don't have that much data details. Questions?
Dietmar, thanks. That's really helpful. I posted a question in the chat because my internet connection is really, really bad, and I lose.
Okay. Yes, I hear you. I heard that SAS Planet is saving the SAT images into its cache, which might lead to needing a lot of storage capacity on a computer. Is there a way to clear the cache after I've created the MB tiles? Absolutely, there's a way to clear the cache. Just like we navigated to that directory, we can also go into, there's a Windows opportunity for us, we can go to the directory where SAS Planet is. So I installed SAS Planet on my C drive, and there's a directory called Cache SQLite. And if I go in here, and I can simply delete these directories, this will get rid of all the cache that is. Does that answer your question, Vicky?
It does. Thank you very much.
You can also, in SAS Planet, specify where you want that cache file to be, whether it's on an external drive, but obviously every time you connect and disconnect on an external drive in SAS Planet, that directory may change. If you use external drives, sometimes they don't necessarily show up again as a D drive. They may come in as an F or an E. Does anybody else have any questions with regards to this particular use case scenario and how to get in and out of a tight spot? Please come now.
Dietmar, it's Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Hey, as you were doing that, you said we can obviously see that there's a rock I didn't know where you were looking to see that there's a rock, but sometimes I've found some difficulty in determining, for example, that that's an issue there that you're pointing at. It's a new thing to me, and I'm finding the resolution such that I sometimes am not sure what I'm looking at.
All right, so let's go back to SAS Planet, because satellite interpretation is really the cat's meow here. It's an additional thing you kind of have to learn and get used to. And in this world, there's different satellite providers. And as we look into creating charts for different areas, so let's just say that I have an indication that this might be a rock. It could be a wreck, could be something, it could be an optical illusion, but as we zoom in, this doesn't look good. Now let's go to a different map source. So let's go to Bing. And we'll go to Bing satellite. Bing satellite also shows some disturbance in the water here. Would you agree with that, Peter?
Yes.
We can go to another map source, which is Esri ArcGIS. So this is a different satellite provider, and we're simply changing where we're getting this data from. And even on ArcGIS, we only get to zoom level 18, but even here it looks pretty suspicious to me. If I see something that doesn't look like water and it's not shallow, I'm going to assume it's an obstacle. It's literally entrance by entrance where this takes place. Interestingly enough, here we see where there is an anchorage because we know there's a boat here, right? There's actually two boats that are anchored right here. They may be anchored or they may be moving, but we know that this is deep water. So we could add this location on this image as a safe waypoint because we know at least a boat is there or has been moving in there. Now let's go to San Blas, because San Blas is notorious for having what I would call challenging lighting and challenging anchorages. So let's go to this particular area here. This is it on Google. This is it on ArcGIS, which is actually a better lighting scenario. And then sometimes we can change the map to Bing satellite. Here's what Bing shows us. So let's go into a known anchorage that folks like to get into, this one here. This is in Bing at zoom level 18 that we can see down here. And here it gets pixelated already. So Bing only goes to about 18. Let's switch over to Google. That's actually not so good. They do have a very good image of this particular island. And I think Rob found this. On this particular island, you can see almost the footsteps. You can see somebody's having a picnic here. But you don't have a real good water view or entrance view. And looks at the same map on Esri, and that's actually a lot better than even Google. So for different anchorages, you have to play around to find a better data source. SAS Planet, ironically, also allows you to pull in marine maps, including navionics. So it will go out, and this is basically the navionics map for the area that they have on file. That's the one that's online. We can also look at the sonar charts. That's a little bit better, right? And our goal is to use satellite charts in conjunction, because these you can buy, but the satellite charts are something that we have to create and then make available for you. Questions?
So does SAS Planet charge?
No, it's a free software. It's out of Russia, and it's an easy tool to simply install and have available. For the intents and purposes of you creating charts, a Windows computer, which now runs you $300, it's well worth it to have. And you can then plug in this little external GPS unit, and now you have a completely sustainable backup to your navigation. And Bill and Kristen, I know you guys are itching to get to the Bahamas probably, and it works just as well in the Bahamas there. And you know that charts there are not as good. They have, I think, a 5% chart accuracy. So that's the big case use scenario for OpenCPN. You can download OpenCPN from opencpn.org, and it runs on just about any laptop, as I said, Windows, Mac. You then have also another opportunity If you have a NEMA to USB connection, you can then add additional instrumentation and logging to your OpenCPN. If you have one of those connectors that allows you to get your NEMA data from your navigation system on your boat into the laptop, OpenCPN allows you to record, visualize, and display the data. But I really like the duality of seeing where I am on a chart, seeing on where I am on a satellite image, and then have your chart plotter there as well. You have your depth sounder. And in Good Nautical now, we have the ability to import your prior tracks and of course then save them and export them to a GPX so you can export them back out to your chart plotter easier. One caveat on all of this is of course GPS accuracy. A key factor of whether or not this works for you. Because if your GPS accuracy is 17 meters, in other words, you're going to be out 50 feet, if you're going through a really tight reef path, you still have to obviously have visual confirmation. And for that, there's nothing better than a depth sounder and actually having the light behind you as you enter some of these zones where it's very important that you see the coloration of the water to verify that you're not going onto the reef, but you're actually going between the reef.
You had mentioned that you could do this with a $300 Windows computer, but it seems like it's pretty both graphics and compute intensive and hard for me to believe you can get the kind of graphics chips and compute power you need in $300.
Yeah, I bought a laptop at the Walmart in Acapulco 2 years ago for $350 and it still works and displays it. It actually works on this Samsung tablet too. Of course, you can throw more money at the problem, but you can also buy 3 of the same computers and then have basically 3 redundancies, right?
That's what I like.
And that's what I do. I have several computers and if one goes down, well, I'll just pick up the other one. The real beauty of it is as you start using it, as you start looking at these tracks and you start recording them, it starts making sense why satellite imagery is better. The other caveat we of course have to take a look at, let's look at the recent disaster that happened. Let's look at Hunga Tonga. Let's see what happened at that particular location. So if you've been to Tonga, you tend to sail by that area and it was always infamously known as the island that keeps growing. Visit Tonga. Okay, so here we are. So this is the actual volcano that blew up, right? And now let's look at different map sources. See if Bing has something. Yeah, Bing's not bad, but you see it's a complete different shape. And we're in the exact same spot, but it's a complete different. And then if we go to Esri and we'll go to ArcGIS, this looks more like the one it was. So we know this is probably the newer version of this particular area, or maybe Bing went there and they just did a satellite reconnaissance of the same area. But as you can see, this is a very active area because this is the landmass that appears and disappears. Once we have a clearer picture, once the ash cloud is gone, we can basically look at that. So the way satellite images are generated from a NOAA level actually is every 18 days or so, the satellite goes over the same spot of the planet, and depending on what time of day, it'll be clearer, it'll be covered by a cloud, or it may have a better angle of view angle. That's why we like to look at different satellite images. But even so, the accuracy of the image is all depending on the visibility of the planet from 50 miles up. Google Earth has an ability to give you different slices, historic slices, over the last 20 years or so you can compare things in a historic matter of what has evolved. So even for the path, getting in and out the Rio Chagres, or particularly for this particular volcanic area in Tonga, we can see that there's huge differences over time. And that's something that, of course, that satellite images have really changed the ability for us to do so. This ability to create satellite charts and use them as an additional aid to navigation is only 10 years old. Paul Higgins, who created it, and all the other people that are actually pushing for this as an additional aid to navigation, because the chart companies, they make money by creating charts, and they want to sell you the chip for the South Pacific. We want to make sure that what is actually in front of us is passable. None of them will take that risk for us. It's up to us.
Hi, Dietmar, Vicky again.
Is there a way to know how old the sat images are in Google Earth Pro, which you can download? There you have the ability to see when that image was taken. And these are all big MB tile charts. For example, we created Dominican Republic at 7.4 gigs, but it's really good data. So here are all your satellite charts for the South Pacific. So with this, we'll conclude this little informative introduction use case scenario to OpenCPN. Again, the first thing is you download it. The second one is you get your charts. You make sure you have your charts downloaded and you download your satellite charts. And then lastly, and most importantly, figure out how to get a GPS signal into OpenCPN. And that can be done by attaching this little dongle or by using a signal from your navigation system, and that can be wireless, it can be a NEMA 2000, it can be NEMA 0183, it can be a USB connection to your data to make sure that your chart actually reflects of where you are. And then the last most important thing is verify the accuracy of the GPS signal, see how many bars you have so that you know how accurate that is as you navigate it and have it on your display as you're making your way through tight reef passes. That's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.